Do, 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 do. Welcome to the Friends with Benefits podcast, a business podcast about revenue-generating partnerships, not a podcast about business time with friends. We're your co-hosting couple. I'm Jason.
And I'm Sam. Welcome to the show, friends.
Welcome back to the show, friends. We are live-ish with another episode coming from the RB household and the World Wide Web of, technology. Sam, hello. Beautiful as always. It's, it's a good day to podcast. Montana's getting a little bit cooler. We had a 30-degree morning this morning, and right now it's a beautiful 60 and the window's open. I can't imagine a better way to podcast.
Bye-bye garden. We're moving on into the winter months.
Sam's talked extensively about the garden on the podcast and other things she's done out there, and this morning we may have lost it. So say a prayer for my wife. Today, though, I think we've got the most interesting person in podcast. If, the most interesting man in the world was in partnerships, it would be Blake Williams. And Blake is somebody I've got to know over the last few months, we call it, the last couple of conferences. I had a really great time hanging out, chatting, exploring the future, and just really getting real and open with each other, which is what I love about this guy. But if you don't know Blake, he's doing a lot of great things in the partner space, running a little company called Ampfactor and just making some waves out there, putting out some incredible content, and just an overall great guy. I won't get into too much because, we want Blake to talk about himself here. But Blake, welcome to the show, my man.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. And thank you for the your overselling on the introduction. I promise I'll try to live up to it.
It's been a fun couple of months getting to know you. I'm surprised that we've never connected until, what was it, a Catalyst, I guess?
Yeah. It's kind of serendipitous the way things have come together from a philosophy standpoint, just orientation to life, and then things that we want to get done.
Yeah, and this is your first time, quote unquote, meeting Sam. So we're family now, man.
That's it.
Yeah, now it's official. Jason
Right?
goes and meets all these friends, and then he finally brings them home, aka
brings
the
them home.
podcast.
It's like we bring him into our virtual bedroom if we're keeping the pun going here.
Right?
That might be too far.
I don't know. What is it? Nick Offerman and his wife have the podcast in bed with Nick and
really?
his wife's name
This
is.
is true. Yeah.
I forgot what his wife's name is, but that's a very hilarious podcast. And their very first guest, I think, was Bill Hader, and they actually recorded the episode in their bed with Bill.
Yeah.
Wow, we've really digressed on this
That's
podcast.
pushing it.
Yeah.
That's pushing it.
Anyways,
So,
Right.
welcome back, friends.
yeah, welcome back to the show. We'll do the intro all over again. So, Blake, I want to know, as I'm just getting to know you, what do people know Blake Williams for?
Geez, I don't know. Hopefully loyalty, good ideas. I have a gaggle of daughters. We're up to 4.
Isn't that what you call turkeys?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So 4 daughters altogether. Hopefully that, and hopefully partnerships and marketing. Maybe lastly, those
Nice.
things.
Yeah. I like that. It's funny, as I've been thinking a lot this week about kind of the things to be known for. And it's top of the list always comes down to being a great dad, being a great husband, and being a successful business person, partner person, whatever it might be, is so far down the line. And appreciate hearing you say that on the podcast and sharing that. I really got that sentiment from you last time we were hanging out, which was in Boston, and kind of see that in your bio states 4-time girl dad first and foremost. So I feel like you really embody that. So love to see it.
I think that's cool though, because that's the beauty and the blessing of being in partnerships is the basis. Are you a good human? Do you care about your relationships? And if you can't do that for your personal life, then you got some work to do before you can do that.
That's to be sure. And to be clear, I have work to do all over the place for sure.
We all do.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Don't we all?
Admitting it's the first step.
Yes,
that's why we started a podcast about relationships.
Right. That is it.
So I have heard a ton about you, as we just talked about. This is the first time we're actually chatting, so my pleasure. But for those of us who are new to the Blake Williams Atmosphere, Orbit. I spent some time on the Ampfactor website.
Yep.
Can you explain from your perspective how ABM for partners / ecosystem teams works?
Yeah.
Why it's important, and you've built a whole business around this, so why?
Yeah, I'll start with, I'll kind of tell the story and it'll make sense. As I left a venture capital fund and I was helping big brands think about how to launch portfolios of 8-figure startups. So they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars, and how do you spin out, groups of these software companies and go acquire their alpha, beta, and delta customer. Then I was spinning up ABM. I was like, this is too hard. There needs to be a unified model, a practice, a technology structure that other people want to rent at the same time and just get to business outcomes instead of spending a year to get there. So I went and built that, and that's how Ampfactor started. But how ABM kind of gleaned its way into relationships was my first customer was a big $4 billion company, and they were hiring enterprise sellers. And it was like, I'm going to hire John because John has sold to Progressive 8 times, right? And he's going to sell to them again. It's going to be they have one account that they have to manage, period. And that's their whole job, is to work their way into that entire account, which is a massive job. And instead of just like going off of some seller's wish list, which is kind of how it started, I said, why don't we just build digital programs around where these sellers are already going to go out to and soften the dirt for them? Let's see if we can be an accelerant. Let's see if we can't open up, multiple points of entry and get multi-threaded as quick as we can. And that went well. And I was like, well, where else can we replicate this? Because we were kind of running out of enterprise sellers. There's like 7 on a team, right? And it's like, we need to scale this. We can scale the operation. How do we do it? So we looked for partners. Partners are our access to other enterprise sellers, and a way that we can give is to say, hey, we'll put a digital wrapper around any current opportunities or anybody that you're trying to close, and we'll try to accelerate. Just talk to us about the intent that you can't go source from Bombora or ZoomInfo. Tell us like the real deal of what they're dealing with in the account, and we'll formulate a narrative around that to either put the wind at your back or get ahead of some risks and those kinds of things. So before I knew about Reveal or Crossbeam, I was doing just VLOOKUP, XLOOKUP in, just MBA basic stuff inside of Excel to get to these lists. So what I ended up realizing is, 1, now we're leveraging partners. 2, if we want intent data that you can't go source from anyone, we can go manufacture it by working with the other partner teams and asking them to ask a couple questions, right? Well, they won't give us the time of day because we're nobody yet. They are who they trust to kind of look out for them and provide insight, recommendations, and guidance. So we leveraged that, and that really started to be kind of our accelerator in terms of where do we invest, where do we double down, and how do we pool our money so that we have that LTV to CAC ratio payoff that we're looking for over the long run. So it's kind of landed there, and that's kind of officially what nearbound data is, right? Is not just, is there an overlap? Is there an opportunity? Sure, it's in pipe. Okay, great. Can we manufacture intent data? Awesome. What does it look like from an ACV perspective? Can we get any windows to the soul of what's happening in that buying group, right? Without having to actually go approach them, so that we can basically formulate that perspective of a high dollar restaurant. When you go sit down at a nice restaurant, it's kind of like they expected you, they anticipated your needs, they thought about the things that you would want and need or like and love before you got there. And that's kind of what I think of as a buying experience. And partnerships allows the air for opportunity for consideration, and ABM is the methodology that we use to deliver it. So sorry for a long answer, but that's the windy road.
Oh, good. What was the kind of initial impetus to start exploring with partners and going down this track as you were already building out ABM campaigns, looking for more revenue? Like, what caused you to say, you know what, we should look in this partner closet?
There's only so long that you can run enterprise ABM campaigns before an executive says, okay, this is enough awareness and engagement bullshit. We we at the end of the day, we need sales qualified opportunities. And necessity is the mother of innovation. So I was like, okay, we just started thinking, and I was like, okay, we got to solve this together, because the entire market is, from Terminus to 6 Sense and Demand Base, everybody's telling you to run your programs this way, and that this is success. And it's not success by the business's definition by any way, shape, any stretch of the imagination. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So we got pushed to the limits, and then we had to produce. And I was like, where are those relationships at? You know?
Nice.
I also love this because, I mean, we talked about this last week on our episode with Jill about how, so Jill and I both live and breathe in the Salesforce ecosystem, and we don't have the luxury of a Reveal or a Crossbeam because Salesforce isn't going to buy it.
Right.
But we have created our own internal systems of like creating this data and tracking the relationships we have with partner people, but building that bridge between our partner sellers and our sellers. And that's the gray area still. But you kind of just talked about that. Like, I love your analogy about the restaurant of we're ready for you. We've been expecting for you. We already are 3 steps ahead of you. It's brilliant.
Well, I actually, so on this very topic, there's a mentee of mine over in Denmark, and she is operating in a world where she has to compete against Adobe and Salesforce, who are partnered up with GSIs like Accenture with local offices there. And she is trying to manage just, you know, a small pool of 27 solutions partners and 3 technology partners. And their I call it a give portfolio and a get portfolio. Their give portfolio of deals that they give to their partners is way bigger by like 4 or 5x than what they receive historically over 2 years.
Nice.
And we were talking about strategies to flip the script, and she was like, "Well, how can I use my newsletter? What am I going to change about my field events?" And I think, you know, I always come back to this. The sellers are the ones who, I don't care what the incentives look like for the business, the sellers are the ones who choose where that referral goes 100% of the time. It just so happens that right now, influencing and being a sponsored influencer is in. And there's not a company in the world that will come out against that saying, hey, seller, you can't be a sponsored influencer talking about whatever your point of view is. So I advised her to go and find the folks at the top of the leaderboard at her top 5 partners and then sponsor them. Pay $1,500 a month, right? Pay them to create content for both of your shared audiences. And it's a hearts and minds. And again, I don't care how much Salesforce is paying to the company in commission for that. That Salesforce seller wants to grow their brand, charge more for influencing, and be more relevant to their audience all day long. So it's a hearts and minds play. It's not expensive, but it's super strategic, right? And doing what we were just talking about.
I think that's great. And, you know, as far as staging as a partnership, how involved, you know, is someone like her and what that content looks like? Are they giving them free reign? Is it, you know, hey, here's $1,500, go create, just tell our Better Together story?
Oh, no, negative on that. Yeah, so for I was like, she kind of said the same thing. So we just give them $1,500. How do we track that? I'm like, no, you go to the Ukraine, find a company for $2,000 a month who'll do all your post production, right? And then go out and get 5 of those sellers, and then get a contract, 1-page contract. Say, let's decide on what our point of view is going to be. Let's decide on, you know, and they're gonna share what accounts they're talking with. Why is it relevant? Why does their point of view need to be that this month? What accounts are they trying to influence? And that's the whole point of the content, is that even though we don't have Reveal or Crossbeam to tie us together, those sellers are going to come walking towards us, right? And it'll build loyalty all day long. If we stand by them, now they're helping us put content where people learn, right, share, and grow. And we got to redeploy some LinkedIn ad spend that's probably not producing anywhere near the amount of effectiveness that this actually will. We'll be way closer to the money, right? And so put rails around it, shape your content pillars the way that you'd like, and then distribute it.
No doubt. So I keep bringing this up. It was a great conversation with Jill, but last week when we talked to her, I love that she was talking about how, like, as a partner person, you have to remove yourself from the story, and you aren't the hero. This is not about you. You are out there building relationships and making other people look good.
Yes.
I've heard you say that if a CMO partners well with partner teams and partner ecosystems, they can become the hero that empowers sales, CS, and I agree with you. So clearly, hearing you talk about ABM, you are a marketer. You come from this. For maybe partner teams who are a little more removed from their marketing teams or who don't have the full vision, how can you elaborate on this and how partner teams should be approaching marketing leaders to get on board?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it takes a little bit more. There's probably a full clinic that needs to be put on for just this practice. But
Coming soon.
right, yeah, yeah. Still LinkedIn near you for sure. And again, to level set, it's the whole. You got to think about it from an executive's perspective, right? If you're an executive or you're thinking about putting yourself in their shoes, they feed their family with their decisions and how they manage and what results they produce. They're not going to take on willy-nilly just because it's all over LinkedIn. I'm not going to introduce a new process to my team, reshape RevOps, and then sacrifice potential that at least I have a known devil over here, even though it's not producing as much as I'd want to. I'm not going to reallocate those resources to go kind of test and figure this thing out. And that goes for probably 60% of executives, right? They're probably going to be reserved. So from their perspective, the unknown, right? If they don't know anything about how to monetize with partners, it's a bomb. Like, why would I pull that pin? So part of your journey needs to be about education, right? And it's not going to be a single conversation, but it's repeated drum beating education to teach them about how should we think about this data. And they'll come to the ideas on their own better than you could as a partner leader on how to mobilize that data. How can they leverage it to subsidize their own inefficiencies, right? But this is your first ecosystem that you need to influence, is those functional leaders around you internally to get your buy-in. Absolutely. To make all the other stuff worthwhile, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially like change management, and it
That's
requires, I think, the same skills that you would go in with change management, right? And in your experience, how have you helped coach partner programs to effectively lead that change management? Because this is something that I'm complete agreement with you, and I've gone through myself and believe it has to happen, but it's not quite there yet.
Yeah, at the beginning of my journey, there's two things that kind of compete for what to start with. There's the pain storming and gain storming, right? Find out where each of your functional leaders are hurting and find out where they feel like the biggest opportunities are for them to make a leap forward, right? And then look at your partner program and partnerships or partner opportunities and find out how you can align and structure there. And then there's the whole business case aspect of it, but nobody gives a shit about your business case if you don't have context, right? So they need education before the business case, and they're not going to painstorm and gainstorm with you unless they respect or know you. So somebody needs to spend some time together, right? There's really no fast way to truncate this. There's just the hard work of kind of thinking about things together, building credibility in your program, which comes through rigor, which comes through a point of view that is respectable and well articulated. I think those are probably your best bets in terms of making advancements or cracks in the dam. Find out, when you're trying to do change management, you're trying to identify who's the naysayer, who's the risk, who doesn't like change, and who's hungry for it. If you can create another champion and multiply yourself, right, then silo off on that person and then get educated, spend some one-on-one time, and then now it's both of you fighting that fight. Right, and you've kind of 2x'd your effectiveness.
Yeah, I always encourage anytime anyone's starting a new program or starting a new company, like your first 30 days, so critical in building those relationships and getting to know those people, and that's your first impression to get them on your side. Yeah. Right, spend your first 30 days getting to know the teams that you're going to directly influence.
Yeah. I think this is we haven't really talked about this on the podcast either, but this made me think of it. First of all, empathy, which we have talked about. So what are these leaders trying to accomplish? You touched on it, Blake. And where are they coming from? But also executive presence. So being able to level up and speak their language and ask for a seat at the table and earn a seat at the table. And I haven't heard that talked about much in a partner lens of executive presence, but it's absolutely crucial, because to your point, if you don't have those internal relationships, your external relationships don't matter. Right.
You can't get them funded. You never get off the ground. Yeah. And how do you, there's no master class. Maybe there are some master classes for it of what does it sound like, look like, and feel like. There are partner executives absolutely out there doing it, but it takes a lot of business acumen, right? Because you're trying to retranslate everything that you know from partner speak into general business acumen, the way that it reads off a balance sheet or makes sense from a finance perspective.
Yeah. You gotta learn how to speak revenue talk, speak CRO language, right? Talk revenue mix and all that fun stuff, and
product and marketing and all of it.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's,
I think there is something to that. The revenue talk, that might be like the USD of the world, where all foreign currencies get banked in that, right? So maybe all functional elements get banked in revenue speak. So if you can at least get there, they have a bridge to cross from, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally.
In theory, how have you guys seen it done?
I'm thinking back to like everything you just said. I'm like putting through my lens, and it's exactly what you said. It's like I actually became really close with our CFO of all people. I am not a finance background person
It's the first person you want to get friendly with real fast.
Right.
Yeah. And I started to be like, look, here's how we're going to scale. This is how we're going to grow. And, that was the bridge of like breaking into the executive team. And now I'm on the executive team, but it's finding those internal champions and making your case through the lens of what they care about, but also how you're going to grow the business, have a plan, come prepared. And that's it.
That is it.
Yep.
That is it.
Be willing to jump right in and share your ideas and like where you can make your mark within the company as you're meeting with these leaders. I mentioned like the first 30 days are crucial. Like when I was at the last two programs I led, the first 30 was just about getting to know the team. 90% of the time was spent just talking to the leaders, like getting time with the CRO, CMO, CFO, find out who exactly needed to be on my side to help me get what I needed accomplished, right? So Drew have to learn real fast that it was kind of the head of finance, and he controlled a lot of the keys, and he became my main guy to get to know really well, get on my side, and from there it was like I got buy-in across the board, and then obviously CRO, who I reported to, and letting him understand very clearly what my vision was for the program, how we're going to accomplish the goals we had established, and showing them what the steps forward were. Like, come in, get to know the team, make it as plain as possible so they can understand, because most of these departments don't understand what you're doing. They don't understand partnerships the way you don't understand product, right? So you got to make it plain and really, all intents and purposes, dumb it down.
I think that's I think you hit the nail on the head right there, is that if you can make the numbers work, you can make it make sense. You can retranslate it back to marketing or customer success or customer marketing sales. You can walk those numbers back, but as long as finance agrees, that might be the anchor, right?
Absolutely.
In the team for sure, because that's the no-go gate.
They're like the key keeper in what is it, Matrix? He has all the keys to all the doors. Like those guys, they have it all.
They got it all for sure. Yes.
So no doubt. So let's talk a little bit more about Ampfactor, and curious to know kind of your experience and what you've been building and kind of what you're learning from it. So as you've been building for what now, about 5 years?
Yeah. So I mean, we incorporated in while I was at the venture. What's funny is I haven't really told this story before, but while I was at the venture capital fund, I was managing director there, and I had an idea. And while we're talking about executive buy-in, I pitched the idea, and I needed $160K for it. And I like executing, so I got one no. And then it's not that I'm not willing to sit there and try to win you over a couple months, but I got better shit to do. So I went home that night and had a couple of drinks, and I incorporated a company. That company is called the Growth HQ LLC DBA Ampfactor. And that happened that night, and was May 19th, 2019. And we didn't start, I quit in November and then started selling in February. And we've been going ever since. So that's kind of how we really got around. And I was going to call the company 160K, but because I got that kind of energy in me. But either way, so we started with ABM, general ABM, and then we shifted, niched all the way down, right? There's riches and niches, and we niched all the way down to ABM between partners. And now kind of ABM it was the execution component, but now it's more describing the methodology of being very thoughtful, intentional, and considerate about the motions that you're about to get into, not just because of the business case. Year one, it was like, give us your wish list. We'll be as targeted as we can possibly be, and we'll send whatever messages you have right down that pipe. And that doesn't go well because shit going in, shit going out. And as you can see, we can get awareness and engagement, but it doesn't drive conversion.
You can even drive traffic, but still not driving conversion.
And now I won't even sell display ads in any way, shape, or form. I'll just be like, if you want to just give me the money, you can give it to me, but I'm not going to spend it.
No programmatic advertising in ABM? Kind of.
I'm just not going to do it. We're not that kind of party. And to tell you the truth, you probably don't have the ABM maturity. Unless you're Snowflake, you don't have the ABM maturity to operate at that level, right? Which means that you are not generating enough strategic value in small plays to actually have a reason to scale it that wide. You haven't tested your messaging, you haven't tested your narrative, you haven't created these iterative loops that actually turn over value. Sure, you can do gifting, and sure, you can do all these other things that have micro pops of ROI. But as far as programmatic ROI and being able to move across a vertical in named accounts and then show penetration and then win those accounts, those are the kind of things that we get involved in. So ABM for us now is that methodology. We use paid influencers. We use, putting people in communities and placements and things like that. And we're using all the different things that make just a smart, integrated, it doesn't even have to be expensive, demand gen program, right? What we really try to focus on is like, if you create something new and different and unique, then all of this stuff is tactical. It's barely strategic, right? It's just the things you would do because it makes sense in 2023 Q4, right? But you've created something unique. And that's the other reason why partnerships are so valuable, because they subsidize the brand that you don't have. So if it takes 2 partners, 3 partners, 4 partners, you can keep subsidizing the brand and the uniqueness that you don't have when you stand alone in this unique package that says, hey, company A, B, C, and D all come together to sit over top of a single workflow, integrate, and then we add so much value. It's one decision to buy, right? And not this massive procurement process. So long answer.
I love the approach of kind of like the intelligent penetration of where the accounts are actually spending time. So actually infiltrating with relationships of where people are, like you mentioned, communities, and placing people in those communities to target where those accounts are spending time, and really building effective relationships around those communities. And that is a unique play for an agency, especially when most agencies are just chasing the media dollars. I mean, there's obviously millions in advertising dollars you could go after and bring into the business, but instead, like, let's actually find where we can make the biggest difference and actually get some real conversations. Because in most ABM efforts, and kind of been around this for a while, like most people, it kind of drop off, meaning the companies running ABM drop off when they actually get the engagement. It's like, oh, what do we do now?
Right.
Now we just start calling them. But no, there's other better tactical ways of actually creating engagement and advancing that pipeline.
Yeah.
Obviously, partnerships are being one, and it's a great opportunity to really accelerate what you're building in pipe.
That's it. I mean, that's when the stuff gets fun, because I mean, as a marketer, I feel like the creative aspect of it gets lost in trying to do these massive programs. And like, how do we do something special, like rent a truck outside of somebody's global HQ on the day that they know they're having a conference or something like that? Like those targeted things are only possible because you've earned your way that deep into the pipe. You've spent $5,000 doing influencing and small level demand. Now it's an opportunity. Now you can go back to finance and say, look, I need $25,000. We just use that 5X or 5K to create an opportunity. We're going to use this 25K to lock in this $500,000 opportunity. Yeah.
I think it's so, I mean, in the world of MQLs and click-through rates and email opens, and it's all just vanity metrics that the world has like gotten used to hanging their hat on. But you're so right. Like, if you really break it down, the CAC for a customer when you're doing all of that is so high and so unpredictable and so it's like, so that's the way. I have a very left turn question. I hear you're a fan of AI.
Yeah.
Okay. So you said you're working on thoughtful, intentional, and considerate plays. Yes. How do you feel that AI is going to play into this and change the future for that?
Yeah. Thanks for asking that. So The AI that I'm kind of getting behind is interactive AI, right? And you might hear it called human in the loop, but I don't like I think we're too nascent from a global perspective in terms of our AI being able to produce content, black box kind of. I give it a prompt and then it automatically generates something that wows me. That's, from a quality perspective, is better or more advanced than human expertise could deliver, right? And so rather, instead of using AI as that magic machine, why don't we use it as a facilitator to conduct normal workflows, expert workflows that consultants typically use to pull information out of their clients, right? Even though they don't know the right answer, they know the tactical information or the tacit situational information that we want to pull out, interpret, and then reformulate back to them, right? Good marketing is always, you can be successful if you can articulate your customer's problem better than they can. And we're kind of doing that same thing from a Better Together story standpoint, where it's like, just give us the raw input. We're going to facilitate you through a workflow where we gather the raw input from you, but also from the website, any links, any documents, any content that you can share with us. And then from that architecture, we'll leverage the generative AI to say, okay, we have this big horsepower behind us. Let's put a fine point on it now. And then let's start showing you snippets of the content that we might use in your collateral, and you pick A or B. And as you pick A or B, you're kind of dialing in the way that you want to see that story come together. So we've gone from wide aperture down to we've been fed relevant content and structure, tone and voice, to you've now approved along the way micro pieces of that and taught the AI to produce content the way that you like to see it. And now we can generate landing pages, blogs, ebooks, recruitment decks, all within the partner world, right? We're not trying to be a Jasper AI where it's let's create content for all use cases. We only have 10 or 15 use cases that we need to ever solve for, and we just need to be really, really good at authorship, and then on point delivery from a pixel perspective. How does it come across from a design standpoint?
Nice. So really automating the process behind going to market, and the materials needed therein, accelerating the time that you can go to market with partners, and allowing them to focus on the strategy and the relationship, which kind of goes back to the conversation we had with Rob Rebholz, like being able to automate, to build better relationships.
Right.
Yeah, and thinking of it as an assistant, not a replacement.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. As that assistant that makes you better. Right. And from an automation standpoint, like one of the hardest things, I think, if you've ever co-sold before, automating that, just the term of it is a misnomer. You don't automate that, right? If the deal's worth anything, you're not automating it. You may automate the process leading up to it to some extent, the exchange of the volley of emails, those kinds of things. But the creation of those opportunities, and for me, the content, I feel like has to be specific and relevant to that one deal or that one partnership, that one use case, whatever it is. And that's the world I'm trying to live in. And I feel like what Rob's building and what I'm building will eventually probably end up coming together nicely, where we create the content that get mobilized in multiple playbooks, right, across their workflows and that kind of thing. If I'm imagining,
it's kind of just like what we were talking about with ABM, right? You programatize everything up until that point of engagement.
Right.
All right. So as you're co-selling with partners, you're putting material out there, and me, Tav, and Justin Keller have run a ton of partner ABM efforts in our time. So we built all these plays, and once they got to a certain stage, like they're on the chat bot or whatever, then it becomes like human element involved, and like it goes from programatized to actually real.
Oh yeah,
engagement.
you were at Terminus.
Yeah. I was running these partner ABM plays around the time you were incorporating.
That's it. You were one of those hype
like
masters. All right.
Yeah, I remember 20. I guess it'd been like 2020. I went to Keller and I was like, I got a crazy idea. We've got this platform, Terminus.
All right.
I've got this partner data coming from ShareWork that's now Reveal.
Yeah.
I was like, what if we put this data inside of our platform? And Keller and Tav did the same thing. They were like, huh.
Yeah,
it's a good idea.
Yeah.
So we started running some partner ABM plays, and the rest is history.
No doubt.
And Caitlin Matchett, who's also now at Reveal, we really 300% growth in that program over the course of a year. And
Wow.
part of that was the market initiatives therein. So like we saw it scale, and we saw what the benefit of partner ABM and really doing it right. I also remember too, like, I'm not here to talk about myself, but it was funny because my buddy Charles, I was working with Bombora at the time as well, like as a partner of Terminus, and I would take all the share work data, manually pull it into Bombora from a spreadsheet, pull that intent, anything over a score of like 80, would pass over to marketing, run some plays on that, cycle it back up, get it to the AEs. So there's a lot of magic there.
There is. There's very few people that can go around and talk about the actual tactics, right, of getting the things done. They can say automate stuff at a high level and that kind of thing, but piecing it together is a different thing, for sure.
I'm trying to do as little work as possible.
Amen.
Like, we are in the year of 2023, and we've got AI now and automation and platforms. Like, let's put this stuff in there so I can focus on like the strategy and the relationships.
Now, Sam, I got a question for you. When I said you shouldn't automate co-sell, I saw the color go out of your face a little bit. So what was that about?
No, I agree completely. I mean, everything you guys are saying, up until a point, a human has to be involved. And I think that's where people fall short, is if you don't have the human to human, the relationships that are like pushing things forward and actually driving value, then you're going to fail. So
100%.
Yeah, 100%. I agree wholeheartedly. Okay,
how much do you think a relationship needs to?
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
How much do you think the relationship needs to support that level of automation? Meaning, like, do you feel like you have to have the proper level of relationship with another partner or teams in order to say, like, we're going to put this on Automagic and we're going to let it do its work? Or is it just like,
no,
did you mean to say Automagic?
Yeah,
I did. Yeah.
So Allison Monroe and I always talk about this. Like, if you're going to automate stuff, your shit needs to be earned, which means that you've gotten to a certain point of doing things manually that you've proved. Like, the automation doesn't prove your business case. You've already been successful. You've tested. You've gotten some things done. It's doing more shit faster is not going to be what breaks the mold in terms of creates the outcomes that you need. It will absolutely exponentially multiply them. But if you're not getting to outcomes in a manual process, automating it it's not going to do the trick. You know what I mean? From my perspective.
Okay. No, I think you're so spot on there. And if you don't have the foundation, if people don't know who you are, if you haven't built that trust, then that's absolutely step one. You cannot from the get-go start automating it, because people see through that in a second.
Right. And not only that, like, there's so much that needs to align from both partner sides that, like, the other partner team needs to be willing, the functional areas need to be willing to carry some of the laboring ore as well, right? We're not going to get buy-in to just light shit up and start messaging each other's customers. That's not going to happen. You know what I mean? The only way you get there is from trust, from both partner teams having earned that buy-in. And a lot of partner teams don't have it. I'd say I run across 50% of partner teams that can't go to their customer success person and have that conversation today through Slack. You know what I mean? It would have to be a meeting about, we're trying a new initiative. You know what I mean? Where they're trying to introduce something different.
Yeah. So there's definitely steps to building that foundation before you can start this process.
Yeah.
So I'm super curious, because we've talked about, you kind of alluded to it, how you started Ampfactor when May 19th. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes.
160K, please.
That's it.
Yeah. Sorry. For the true fans, it's 160K.
That's it.
So I've also caught wind that you bought an HVAC company.
Oh, yeah.
You're starting another company.
I may have shared a few things from our conversations.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Some things are a vault, some things are not. Some would say you categorize as a serial entrepreneur. Is this
that, or it's like, I like to, the way my brain works is that having multiple things to focus on keeps me fresh, keeps my brain working in different ways, and keeps me energized all throughout it. If I had 40 hours to just spend on a single thing, it's fun, but eventually I do get bored, right? And there's a a long-term wealth strategy to it. The digital stuff, as we know, it just changes so much, and I can't count on I'd love to say that I'd be able to be in front of all the things as they come. This one just happened to luck out, and I mean pure luck, that Simon from Avaya said, my biggest opportunity for ABM is inside of partnerships. And I was like, I don't know what that is, but I'll do a deal there. So that's how I started in partnerships, and I lucked my way in. The HVAC thing is about taking the cash that we're throwing off. Yeah, I think it's your duty to pay taxes. It's your responsibility to avoid them, and you avoid them by investing in assets that leave no money left to tax, right? So you take that money and flip it over into a different opportunity. For me, HVAC is something that's tried and true. So we looked at the distribution of the customer population between customer, residential, and kind of the long-term contracts. It was a 19-year-old company. So like all the current relationships were there. There was an operator who was interested in, earning equity where he hadn't had any before. So we were able to keep something in place, maintain an absentee ownership status, and then continuously find a place to flip our cash, right, into a place that we're not going to end up paying a bunch of taxes on through trusts and things like that.
So as an absentee owner, how involved are you in that, or are you not?
I'm involved enough because they didn't really, that's why we bought it, is that they didn't have a ton of marketing happening. So there was a bunch of digital footprint refresh and all kinds of enablement from a customer success standpoint and a customer service standpoint, tracking and that kinds of thing. But other than that, we have all the teams in place to kind of report out to us. I have an agency that we hired. I know an agency hiring another agency, but they specialize in HVAC. I just know the big questions to ask, right? I can see through the bullshit, right? And we get down to brass tacks, and they execute really well. So
I love that. You found a company that could use your skills, and I'm going to assume you're not an expert at HVAC. Maybe I'm wrong. But
I'm not. I can build a house from the ground up, but I can plumb. I cannot HVAC anything, right?
Okay, well, that's more than most people.
Yeah. I'm dangerous with a hammer and a nail for sure.
If all else fails, you got plumbing on your...
I can go stand up houses.
How much of this serial entrepreneurship allows you to kind of bring some sort of association, from each business you own into the main revenue driver, right? There's this concept in flow, or like neuroscience at least, around like association from different experiences make you better, like in the main thing that you do, and you're able to connect the dots and bring some of that strategy and ideas to the table through creativity.
That's something that keeps playing over again and again in my life. After my MBA at Clarkson, I got recruited by the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company to go into procurement. And I've had like 15 minutes on procurement at that point, and I was like, okay. So they gave me $400 million to manage in financial services contracts, and I was like, man, and I hated that job. I hated it. The organization, 70,000 people, they move like pond water. Big triangle, people of an organization, they hire to retire. I was there 13 months, but what I learned about contracting in negotiating all these financial services agreements allowed me to never be in sales and never be in marketing, and spin up an agency and start doing enterprise deals with sales cycles less than 90 days. Because I knew how to throw my weight around in a contract. I knew how to structure risk. I knew how to frame the deal for an executive. I knew how to frame it so that you could pitch it and get it funded, right? And that was kind of the heart and soul. If I can get things funded, we can do anything. We can breathe all day long, and that's ultimately how we got up off the ground. So that does continue to play again and again. And then, I was in the Army, right, before college, and there's a certain level of bullshit that just doesn't fly when you're at war. And, coming into the corporate world after school and stuff like that, and I look at models, I'm just like, fuck, we're in business. All we have to do is change our minds, and shit's different tomorrow, right? And it can just be that simple. It doesn't have to be way more complicated than that. So when I look at how things get done, the first things that come to my mind are the simplest, fastest ways that we could possibly do them. And I also have the blessing of not knowing incredibly well how it was done in the past, right? By not being steeped in 15 years of, you should run ads first, You know, that would be the first thing
Sometimes
you
it's
should do.
best not to know.
Right. And now I don't know. And I'm like, really, we should just go talk to the people that we know and see who they can shove us into. That seems like the fastest way to start up. Yeah. And
especially right now, because the status quo is so oversaturated, and it's just not. Man, I got giddy when you're like, it doesn't have to be this way. We can change our mind. That's so
Absolutely.
God, we overcomplicate things.
that's it. That's it.
We do.
Yeah.
I've brought this book up a few times on the podcast. I feel like the author should sponsor us at this point, but Range talks about, being a generalist. And I feel like, all partner people that should be a generalist to some extent. They should have a wide range of experiences and knowledge. And I saw you put a post up the other day mentioning that, everyone should really kind of have a side hustle, right?
Yep.
Whatever that is, whether it's revenue generating or something that you're passionate about. But again, it allows you to come to the table with more creativity, more connections and associations to how it's going to impact your job.
Yep.
And so I think, to what you're getting at here is that you're the ultimate generalist, in that you've kind of been in the Army, you've been in the VC world, and you've worked for Goodyear and all over the place and table and starting things, and so you kind of bring a level of complexity to the table that most people just can't or don't understand.
Yeah, and I feel like there's like I think there's this continuing trend that some people acknowledge and some people are not acknowledging, but everyone's grappling with it or the effects of it, and it's this. The Ukraine just went through something where their illusion of safety and nonviolent activity happening on their front doorstep evaporated in a heartbeat, right? Mm-hmm. The same type of security that you feel like you think you have in the economy today. And I'm not trying to, I don't have any conspiracy theories, but your ass can be fired tomorrow, right? And they're going to put your job description out the next week if funding turns back around, and they're not calling you. Right, they're going to just replace you. So the illusion that you have that you're secure, you're safe, that other people are watching out for you, they are, insofar as they can, but not so much beyond that. And you need a way to count on with yourself, with your friend group, with the local way that you make money. Right, you need a way and resources to marshal to preserve yourself and your family for your own mental preservation. Right. There's only so long that you can live after you go through a couple layoffs that you stop trusting that model. All I'm saying is, like, you should build a back door, even if it's $1,000 a month, $2,000 a month. Don't be left hanging out with just one step or 1 degree away from the breadline. You know what I mean? And everyone has savings, but you don't want to count on that for a year.
Exactly.
And even further than that, like the skills and the grit and all of it that you'll learn is just gravy on top. I think there's so many benefits to it.
Yes.
So
yeah, I mean, and most of us listening are in partnerships. We should know how to build a side hustle and incorporate partners to get you there faster.
That's it.
Use your knowledge.
set up that model. Apply it. Yeah, for yourself so you can eat.
Rinse and repeat.
Yeah, but you hit on something real quick though, Jason. Sam hit on something: the grit and determination, the craftsmanship that I feel like a lot of people lack right now. And I'm not saying that I have any amount of expertise in it, but I feel like I do try to hone my craft. I try to articulate things in a certain way, and I continuously try to get better. There's a lot of people who are, that have work-life balance, right? We'll say. And what I mean by that is that they do clock in and out. They're not giving it 150%, pushing the limits and thinking about things and being at the forefront of their industries. They're just kind of in the middle of the pack, kind of getting pushed along with the current. Right. So the grit, determination, having a side hustle will awaken that energy inside of you, where there's just so many things that need to get done that you have to start thinking differently, and it'll impact your job for sure. Right.
Absolutely. And anything like novelty, complexity, all those things, kind of fuel your grit and your determination to continue growing, especially on a personal trajectory, which kind of leads me into kind of my next question is like, I feel like you and I are kind of on the same path of self-discovery and becoming the best version of ourselves and the best, man, father, husband, brother kind of thing. And, exploring peak performance type stuff. Like what Where did this originate for you? And I feel like, in our conversation is kind of a newer track you're going down, and it's become evident in some of your LinkedIn posts. Like, where did this start for you?
I don't know. I turned 40 and shit 3 foot away just started to get real blurry. And, and it's like, what's going on here?
That's amazing.
Who am I? Right.
When did I get old?
It caused all these self-actualization type questions. And I think that's more of what, I think it's just hitting a level of awareness about, I feel like I've always been introspective, but not to the point that I'm considering really what I'm instilling in my daughters with my words, my behaviors, my looks, and then where do those things come from? And then are they tied to baggage? Are they tied to the way I used to view myself? Or are they tied to an old experience? Is that who I am now? And trying to really force myself to reconcile my personality, my behavior, my word selection with who I am and who I want to be. There's this book that's like Personality Isn't Permanent, and it emphasizes most of those things that I just talked about, where you can kind of make a decision about who it is that you want to be and start being that, right? Again, tomorrow's a different day. You start being that person and you are that person, right? And finding ways to work on that. And I think working on it probably means that I'm trying to specifically or accurately articulate what is actually the source of the problem and be right at the same time, right? When I say problem, whatever it is I view about myself that isn't up to par, because I don't feel like I'm living up to who I want to be most of the time, probably, right? And it's there's some kind of perfect vision I have of myself that I'm pushing for to be for my daughters, for myself mostly, but also for my daughters. But
what does it look like? What's it look like for you to actively work on that? Like, what are you doing as an individual, not a business person, but as a man, a dad who's kind of working on becoming that best version of yourself?
I try to think of it the same way I work in the gym, only because I'm a fan. And once you find a practice that works for you, try to leverage it, like you said, parlay that into many different things. So I use a thing called weak point training. Right. If your hamstrings are weak, then the first thing you do when you go into the gym is you're going to hit hamstrings. Right. If it's lower body, that's the first thing you're going to attack. Where you have the most energy, the most focus, right. The most hydration. That's what you're going to touch on first. And so I try to constantly take inventory of my strengths, which is not a strength of mine, and my weaknesses, which is a strength of mine. And then I try to prioritize which one of these is kind of weighing the heaviest on my mind or right now or in my behavior, because I feel like it ebbs and flows. So my approach of working on myself is taking inventory, identifying those weak points, and going after the ones that are most impactful for me and relevant right now.
I think you hit on something. I mean, you've said it multiple times under different context in our conversation here about change your mind, and that's the truth. And I think that's step one, is like, who do you want to be? Knowing that, putting some thought around that, and then consistently coming back to it, because that's 100% within reach. You just have to choose that every single day with every single behavior. But as you show up to work and, your day to day, you can lose track of that. And
but
it starts with like being aware.
Said than done. Absolutely.
Yeah. And most people aren't, in the daily talks that I have, like most people aren't aware to that level of like, where do I need to improve or do I need to improve? They're just kind of, moving throughout the day. And to become aware, I think, is to, if we want to get philosophical, is like to become alive, right? And really become your best version and bring that into everywhere you go. And Sam and I talk about this all the time. It's like, what does it look like if you bring your whole self into every situation? And I think, there's a lot to learn, especially in the business context, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. But what do you think it would look like if more of our peers started going down this same journey as well, and started showing up and living like this and addressing their weak points and wanting to become their best versions and become more vulnerable and talk about it out loud?
Oh man, I don't know. I'm the wrong person to ask, because half of me, I lived this battle with. no one gives a shit about your shit, right? Right, and keep it to yourself. Like my whole life has been about just show up and get the job done, and then knock it out of the park, hit your goals, walk out, and take all your other baggage with you. And then the other side is like, and this is the part I think I'm trying to change, but I'm also resistant against it too, because like when you go into a room, like no one writes a $1 million check to a dude in jeans. Doesn't happen. I don't care if that's yourself or not, right? You better have your ass dressed up like you're going to ask for $1 million, period. Right?
Unless you're Mark Zuckerberg.
Unless you're Mark Zuckerberg. If you have, $1,000 million, then yeah, you can.
What's another one?
You can throw your weight around. Yeah, but if you don't, then you need to dress like you're there for that role. And that is a version of bringing your whole self to work, which I'm also kind of doing. So it's like, how do you balance being vulnerable without exposing yourself far too much? Because we don't want to see all that. Be vulnerable, crack a window, don't open the door. You know what I mean? But bring your whole self.
I think there's a time and a place for it, because you say people don't care about your shit until they do, because they have the same shit that they're not talking about.
Right.
And that's where I think you can really move mountains, is if you open up and somebody's like, me too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where did that come from?
I saw something the other day that I really liked, and it was kind of talking about like if you show up fully aware and fully displaying the scars that you've gotten over time, right, and you're okay showing those and being open enough, then you make other people feel safe enough to show up with their scars as well, and letting them feel like they can be accepted for what they're going through as well. Most people just don't know that others have gone through the same shit as the others, right?
Oh yeah.
So if you show up wearing your scars and proudly displaying them, like, hey, I made it through this, you can too. Then it makes everybody else feel like, you know what, I can make it, and there's probably something to learn from this guy or woman.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I struggle with that. I was told, actually at Catalyst, two different great experiences. One, I was telling the story about how I bought that HVAC company, and then a woman made a comment, and I won't mention her, but she was watching everybody else respond to me as I said that. And like 3 guys disengaged from the conversation. She could see them physically pull away. And in a different conversation, I was talking about how I grew up poor and I used to have to cut down trees, and, I can build trucks and work outside and all this other stuff, not because I want to, because that's how we grew up. You know what I mean? And that's a story I don't share as well or as often. And people pulled into that, and the same person noticed very different behaviors. And she didn't tell me until later, the same day, 2 different conversations. But it's weird. Like,
it's relatable.
What's that?
It's relatable.
It is. Buying HVAC isn't relatable unless you run in that circle.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, unless you know what you're doing and why that's important. Like, I understand the purchase of an HVAC. We talked about this, but like, if you come to a table and you're relatable, then you can really, relationship is about relating.
But
right?
the function of that HVAC, we talked about it. The practical application is that I fucking cut down trees and 24 quarter wood because we couldn't afford to buy heat oil. The HVAC company makes sure that my kids don't have to do that, right? Ever again. Exactly. That's why I say one separation between you and the breadline. But what I really mean is one separation from me from where I already came from.
Yeah,
you know what I
understand. The HVAC company is about the drive.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about your daughters and your life there, as Jason mentioned.
Yes.
Front and foremost on your LinkedIn, four-time girl dad.
Yes.
This all kind of comes together. I was listening to Brad Stolberg talk about separating himself from the outcome, and you just talked about this with your HVAC company, of how as a person you can have different rooms in your life.
Mm-hmm.
One can be a father, one can be owner of Ampfactor, one can be owner of HVAC, and it's important to be able to sit in all of these rooms and have those things for yourself.
Yep.
But 4 kids, oh my God. We have 2.
Yeah. I know.
How do you balance all of this? And are you working on improving things? Do you feel like you've got it nailed?
I feel like I have my life pretty well structured. I mean, I didn't always, and it took years, but just this year, I woke up and I was like, what the hell am I doing? Like, I'm I would get up at sometimes 4 o'clock in the morning and I'd start working and I wouldn't stop until 7. You know what I mean? And sometimes it takes that. But as of like the past 6 months, I try not to take any meetings before noon. I try to take nothing on a Friday and almost nothing on a Monday. And I get up, we do the breakfast thing. We do Lifetime Fitness after dropping my oldest off. We go work out and we come home and breakfast. And it's a very relaxing full day. I get 6 waking hours with them because everyone gets up at 6:15 here.
Same in our house.
Yeah. So they get a full 6 working hours with me, and then I sit down and I start doing Ampfactor stuff, and HVAC stuff is just always extra stuff. If I wasn't working more than 40 hours a week, I'd be bored. So, but
Random question, but how many hours a night of sleep do you get?
I probably run around 5 to 8. 5 to 8. Never more than 8.
That's a range.
6.5, 6:15 is probably my average. I can go to bed at midnight, get up at 6:15, and be ready to rock.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I can't hang.
Yeah.
Same. I don't know. Go to bed at like 7:30.
Wake up at 7:30.
I don't know if I'm shaving years of my life off or not, but yeah, that's how I do it. That's how I do it.
Amazing.
And it was a journey for you to get there, though. It sounds like.
Yeah, that's recent. This is inside of 6 months that it's been that way. And business didn't go down. Conversations haven't stopped. Nothing really changed other than how I was structuring my energy deployed throughout the day.
And it comes back to exactly what we were talking about before. It's awareness and just choosing that. So good on you for making it happen.
Yeah. Thank you.
I like that structure and energy. So I'm gonna use that one as well. So let's wrap up here. We're at time, and I appreciate you hanging out with us and spending your Friday of no meetings in a meeting.
Thanks for having me.
Let's take a wildly different direction. Let's say you're very much into your own your fitness.
Yep.
You're in this big journey right now of health and wellness and getting in shape.
Yep.
You're on a desert. God, I can't talk. You're on a deserted island.
Yeah.
All right. The only food you can have is your favorite dessert.
Oh,
what is that dessert, and are you going to survive on that alone?
Let's see. I think my favorite dessert would be ice cream, which has enough protein and calcium and and carbs. It's probably and fats actually. So yeah, cookie dough ice cream or peanut butter ice cream. I could probably live on that. As long
I
as
like that though, because that means you have to have a freezer, which means you can go kill meat. You can put meat in the freezer.
Right. Hey, that's not how this goes.
Thinking ahead.
You
ice
don't
cream
have any
randomly
tools?
shows up.
Well, I'm kind of limited. You
Falling
pick
from the sky.
dessert, right?
Yeah, we'll give you the cookie dough ice cream. I'm going cookies and cream.
I thought you were going to say like tool. Like is it a hatchet or a line of string?
No. We're getting into really what matters. Like dessert on a deserted island.
That's it, right?
You gotta have some form of happiness if you're going to be stranded.
That's it.
Man, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. I look forward to. I think we're getting ready to hang out in another city at another conference soon. So I'm stoked about that. But thank you again for hanging out. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you both. Great questions, and I appreciate you for indulging me.
Our pleasure.
Yes.
Blake, thank you so much. Hopefully we'll get to meet in person one day.
Soon
but
enough.
Friends, thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
See ya.